Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is as Ian said, this is the last in a series of 5 talks, and basically mine is about place. You'll see in a moment. Let me go back. I just put that up there. That's the title of the talk. Understanding an Ancestor's Neighbourhood, or locality would be the word I would use more. The Griffith Valuation books, maps and revision books. So we're going to look at those. And I'm going to, I want to make that point there. Valuation records provide us with important place information on land, houses and people. And I have purposely put it as land, houses and people. Remember, valuation records are valuations of properties. The people who are producing these records are not producing them for genealogists and global historians. They're producing them for the rates. So therefore, we've got to look at them first of all in that sense. Sometimes they don't give you the information that you would want as a genealogist or a family historian. The reason is the valuers weren't employed to do that. But they do let us see exactly, precisely, where people actually live. You can point the house easily. You can see exactly where it is. It might not be there anymore, but that's where it used to be. Now, a major part, I have a website, where you can see the address there. In it, there is a particular section devoted to valuation records, and I've just revamped it. Because the reason I've revamped it is because of the fact that now we have the revision books online. I used to spend most of my time coming up here every other week, going through the revision books. Now I can sit at my desk and do it in 5 minutes. And actually, it's easier. And I shouldn't say this, but it's easier to read the books because you can zoom in on them. You can zoom in on the pages. I even can discover things that I didn't see when I looked at the original. And usually it's the other way around. You have to go and look at the original. Now, when valuation records are mentioned, most people think of the Griffiths valuation. And by the Griffiths valuation, how many people have not seen or used the Griffiths valuation? 1 or 2 of you, but most of you have. What I mean by the Griffiths valuation are the printed books, which you will see in libraries. What? You
just use that microphone.
Oh, use the microphone. Right. Can you hear me now?
Just go over quick.
Right. Going to sing? The point is, they're in libraries, they're here. People have seen them all over the years. But and incidentally, the reason they were printed it was to let the farmers see how much their farms were being valued for. And there is an appeal form at the front of every Griffiths valuation book, which the farmer can then use to appeal that his farm is undervalued, overvalued, or whatever. So that's why you only get one printed version. After that, it's all manuscript books. It's all the field books. Now, you have a page there in the handout relating to a townland called Secon Moor meaning big, near Ballymoney, and a copy of a map from the Ask About Ireland website. And I want to... that's the purpose of today's session. Actually, that circa 1830 should be 1860, because I won't have time to do the 1830 bit, I'm pretty sure. But I'm going to do a quick overview. Then I'm going to show you how I would use these sources to answer the 2 questions below, because I thought, how can I actually explain this? There's so much to explain. There is so much to explain. And I thought the best way to do it was to look at 2 houses, basically. Because out of the 2 houses you can do a lot. Now, that may not make much sense to you. Who was living in houses 4BA and 6BA in Secon Moor in the 1861 Griffiths, and who was living there in 1901? Now, you could see who was living, we'll see in a moment or 2, you could see who was actually listed against 4BA and 6BA in 1861, but you won't know who was there in 1901. And also, where exactly were the houses located? Now, the handout that you have will answer those 2 questions, sort of. It will answer the first part, but it won't answer the second part. Although you do have the 1901 census, and if you turn the page over, you will see, well, it's sitting below you, must be sitting on it. There it is. There's one there. Right. The other side has what's known as the Form B1 in the census, and it lists everybody in every house, and it gives it a number. And you might think, well, the number there should be the same as the number in the Griffiths, but it isn't. So therefore, I would even ask you, who was living in those two houses in 1901? Could you guess from that page? You couldn't really, unless you knew the place exceptionally well and already knew the answer. So what we're going to try and do is sort of solve that and answer those two questions. Because in doing that, it's not so much, we're not really that interested in the people who lived in it, but in doing that you will see how to use the sources. That's basically, I've got to find a way of getting across to you how you make use of these sources. And we'll try and do that now. Now there's the I don't want to spend too long on this, but in the middle there, can you hear me all right there, still? It's very hard to hold it. Can you hear me at the back without it?
Yes.
Right.
It's not my mouth.
It's easier that way. Seriously, can you hear me at the back? I mean, I am pretty loud. I can get pretty loud if I have to. So I think I find it easier to move around anyway. If you look at that there's the Griffiths valuation there that we all talk about. Now it's called a tenement valuation. I use the term tenement because the word tenement here is a very important word. When I say tenement to you, what do you think of? The Gorbals in Glasgow.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of the first time I heard it. But it isn't that. It is actually the medieval meaning of the word, which is any kind of real property held by one person from another, a holding. So it's your holding, which is your farm or your house or whatever. As opposed to the modern usage of the word, which is a large building divided into separate flats for rent and usually found in urban areas. So it's a tenant valuation because there's an earlier valuation known as a townland valuation, which is not a tenement valuation. They actually come to conclusions about how to value the townland by looking at the different qualities of soil within it, and that wasn't going to work for sorting out the rates for each farmer because it didn't correspond to the holdings or farms that the farmers had. So they had to change it and do this. This is the one that counts. This one here is good for certain things, but it has problems. This is the one that is the print one. But there's also a manuscript field book. Manuscript meaning it's just written by it's the field book belonging to the valuers, and it contains information which sometimes, not always, but sometimes can be different from what is actually in the printed one. And you're better to always check that. Then we go on to the valuation revision books, which are the ones that we're talking about there a moment or two ago. They have gone online recently, and what it means is this. You can now start in 1861 with the printed valuation or the manuscript field book after you have checked it, and you can then trace what happens to every holding and every house all the way through to 1901 and 1911, and you can match it if you know what to do. Then you can go on further. You can go right through to 1930, and you'll see what's happening in every house and every holding and see who's there by the 1930s. And by that stage you're into probably the memory of at least some people who are still alive. Then actually you can go on to 1993 using a different valuation, but we're not going to touch that today. So therefore that's what we're going to look at in a moment. Just a point about the dates, because you get all these dates bandied about. When people talk in general terms about the Griffiths tenement valuation for the whole of Ireland, they give the dates 46 to 64. Well, obviously they couldn't value Ireland in one day, or 1 week, or 1 year. So different parts of Ireland, if you're looking in County Dublin, it'll be 46. If you're looking in County Londonderry, it'll be either 1858 or 59. If you're looking in North and Mid Antrim, it'll be either 1861 and 62. So whichever area you would be doing your research in, the first thing I would do is find out what is the exact date of the valuations, because they're not going to be the same. And that can make a difference. And in actual fact, I have found that, for example, particularly in County Londonderry in the western part, there's usually a delay of 2 years between the valuation and when the printed book comes out. And quite often there will be changes, and there are actually changes listed in the the manuscript book, the field book. And that's very, very useful to know. Right, we're going to look at Secon more. Now there, for those of you who don't know this part of the world, I didn't put in, there's Ballymoney, that's the edge of Ballymoney. That's the Portrush, what they call the Portrush line. Some of you, that's the ring road round Ballymoney there. You come off at the roundabout, that takes you to Portrush. This way here takes you to Coleraine. It's Secon High, that's Secon Moor there. You come up that road, any of you who know that part of the world, down there, that's a sizzling sausage, if you know where it is. Some of you may have been past it on the way to Coleraine. That's where it is there. Right, so that's quick enough. Now there is a map showing the townlands. There's Secon Moor there, surrounded by Secon Lower, and Secon Beg, which means Secon Small. But I don't see it as much smaller than Secon Moor, but that's what they call it anyway. And then all the other surrounding townlands all the way into Ballymoney. We're not looking at those, but just to give you an idea. You realise now, if people say to me, I would like a townland map, well, I used to have to draw them myself. You don't have to draw them anymore. Because you know the OS 1 to 50,000, on the back of those modern sheets, the latest ones, not the earlier ones, there is a townland map. And every townland is marked. And you can see it from there. So that's a useful thing to know. Now there's what you have. You have that in front of you. Now the question. Who's living in 4BA and who's living in 6BA? Well, does everybody know how to do that? Do you understand these? Do I need to explain them?
Can you pose the question now or leave it until...
Well, no, I'll pose the question now. Can you tell me?
The question I have, the numbers on that refer to
Yes.
individuals, do they in any way relate to actual house numbers? Or, no, none.
No, not until later. You get it in towns. What will happen is, Griffith always goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then in the 1880s and 1890s, in towns, in streets, they start using odd and even numbers. And Griffith starts using odd and even numbers. But the census doesn't use odd and even numbers, except in East Belfast, as far as I can see.
They're purely arbitrary numbers.
Yes, they're actually the geography of the townland. I know where he started. You see the one?
Yeah.
I know where he started. He started at the bottom end of the townland. And he worked his way up to... Now that is not Andrew Pinkerton. That is Adam Pinkerton. That's a mistake. Because I looked for ages for Andrew Pinkerton. And I know who the Pinkertons are, you see. It's not a name they use. But it's a mistake. Let me show you what I mean by that. There is the Val 2A, which is the manuscript field book. That's the actual writing of the man who carried out the work and put it into this book. Look what he calls him, Adam. And he is Adam. I know who Adam Pinkerton is. I know when he was born, I know when he died. And I know exactly who he is. But the Andrews threw me for years, because when I started doing this many years ago, I didn't even know about the Val 2As. I never thought about looking at them. Now I look at them more or less automatically. Now most of the time there's no change, but quite often there is. You'd be surprised how often there's change. So you really need to double check the Val 2As.
Sorry.
I have the questions now.
To go back to the numbering system again.